is on the negotiation of this is a phenomenological approach to deviance. Phenomenological approach to deviance has some similarities to the interactionist perspective. Both phenomenology and interactionism emphasize the importance of the way the law and so explain interactionist perspective. Both phenomenology and interactionism emphasize the importance of the way the law is enforced. Are concerned with the process of labeling individual as deviant, concentrate on studying the subjective concentrate on studying the subjective states of the individual rather than the structure of the society. So this is the importance of the way that the law is enforced are concerned with the process of labeling individuals as deviant, concentrate on studying the subjective states of individuals rather than the structure of the society as a whole. However, interactions of phenomenologists approach the study of deviance in a different ways. So, interactions of phenomenologists approach the deviance in a different way. Negotiation of justice. Negotiation of justice. Negotiation of justice. Or the justice being negotiated while labeling an individual is driven, or the process of meanings attached by the individual by the police is how it involves a meaningful interaction with the process of negotiation. So phenomenological perspective to study individual rather than the structure of the society. And they study the process of interaction with the police, between the defendant and the one that has labeled the individual as jailed. What is the law is enforced concerned with the process of labeling individuals as deviant, concentrate on studying the subjective state of individuals rather than the structure of the society as a whole. Structure of the society as a whole. However, interactions of phenomenology approach deviance in different ways. Emphasize the importance of the way that the law is enforced, right? And the concept in the process of labeling, the concept of the deviant, concentrate on studying and the subject. So how does the phenomenologist differ from interactionist? The perspective that the interactionist advocates that after an individual is labeled as deviant, it will commit more deviant act. However, phenomenology is not concerned with the post labeling of the individual as deviant, but the process of interaction that takes place between the one that has labeled individual as deviant and the other and the deviant, and what are the process involved. So it's not a simple, it's a complex. It involves the means attached by the ethical living the other as deviant, and the negotiation, the process of negotiation that changes on a list in different phases of the negotiation. However, interactions of phenomenology approach the study of the deviance in different ways. phenomenology do not claim to produce causal not claim to produce causal explanations. An example of deviant, right? Yes, what the importance of the way the law is enforced, or concept the process of labeling and process of labeling is a listed. However, interactionist and phenomenologist approach the study of difference in different phenomenologists do not claim to produce causal explanation. They seek to understand phenomena. Thus, phenomenologists attempt to discover what deviance is. By examining the way in which some acts and individuals can be defined as deviant, unlike interactionist, they stop short of claiming that labeling causes people to commit more deviant acts. Defining delinquency. Defining delinquency. The process of defining a young person as a delinquent is not simple, clear-cut, and unproblematic. It is a complex. Defining the process of defining a young person as a delinquent is not simple, clear-cut. clear-cut and unproblematic is a complex process. So it is a complex process involving a series of interaction-based sets of meanings held by the participants. These meanings can be modified during the interaction, so each stage in the process is negotiable. It is a complex involving a series of interaction based on the sets of meanings held by the participants. These meanings can be modified during the interaction, so each stage in the process is negotiable. The first stage is the reason by the police to stop and interrogate an individual. The first stage is reason by the police to stop and interrogate an individual. So what are the stages involved? So it is a complex process. So, defining the process of defining an individual is delicate. The process of defining a young person as a delinquent is simple, clear-cut, and proper. It is a complex state involving a series of interactions where all the sets of meaning held by the participants. These meanings can be modified during the interaction, so each stage in the process is negotiable. The first stage is a decision by the police to stop and interrogate an individual. So the process of defining a young person as a delinquent is not simple, clear-cut, and unproblematic. It is a complex state involving a series of interaction based on the sets of meaning held by the participants. These meanings can be modified during the process of interaction, so each stage in the process is negotiable. The first is the reason by the police is to stop and interrogate an individual. It's a complex series of interaction based on the sets of meanings held by the participants. complex involving a series of interaction based on the sets of meanings held by the participants. These meanings can be modified during the process of interaction, so each stage in the process is negotiable. So the process of finding a person is a simple, clever, and uncommon. It is a complex involving a series of it's a complex process involving a series of interactions based on the sets of the meanings held by the participants. These meanings are to be modified in the interaction of the first stage. The first stage is decided by the police to stop and interrogate an individual. Suspicious, string, unusual, and strong. Suspicious, strange, unusual, and wrong. Such meanings are related to particular geographical areas. Inner city, low income areas are seen as bad areas. Instead, such as a more include suspicious, suspect interrogation did not lead interrogation did not lead to the arrest. So the low income areas are seen as the bad areas with high crime rate. This reason is based on meanings held by the people on what is suspicious, strange, unusual, and wrong. Okay. Such meanings are related to a particular geographical area. Inner city, low income areas are seen as bad areas. First is a reason by the police to stop and interrogate an individual. Okay, the reason is based on the meanings held by the police on what is suspicious, strange, unusual, strong. Such meanings are related to a particular geographical area. Inner city, low income areas are seen as bad areas with a high rate of crime. Consequently, behavior in such areas is more likely to be viewed as suspicious. So, behavior in such areas is more likely to be viewed as suspicious. Introduction did not lead to the arrest. The process is negotiable, right? It depends largely on the picture held by the police, who is a typical delinquent. Introduction did not lead to arrest. This process is negotiable but depends largely on the picture held by the police on the typical delinquent. If the appearance, language, and demeanor of the young person fit this picture, he or he is more likely to be arrested. So, how the process of how the process of labeling an individual a delinquent by the police. This is the main subject matter of phenomenology in the study of criminology. So once arrested, the young person is handed over to a juvenile officer, the probationary officer, who also has a picture of the typical delinquent. Handed over a juvenile officer who also has the picture of what delinquent, the picture of typical delinquent. If the suspect's background correspond to this picture, she or he may be charged with an offense. Okay. Factors assumed to be associated with delinquency include coming from the broken families. So what are the factors? So it's like coming from broken families. from the broken families and appearance. Once arrested, the young person is handed over to a juvenile officer, probation officer, who also has a picture of the typical delinquent. Has a picture of the typical delinquent. Okay, if the backgrounds and all this shoots the delinquency, then okay, once arrested young person, okay, if the suspected background corresponds to his pictures, theory is more likely to be charged with an offense. Factors assumed to be associated with delinquency include broken families, exhibiting bad attitudes, broken families, bad attitude towards authority, poor school performance, ethnic group membership, low income. Delinquent comes from broken families. Bad attitudes towards authority, poor school performance, ethnic group membership, low income families. It is not surprising, therefore, tests found a close relationship between social class and delinquency. So it is not surprising that found a close relationship between the social class and delinquency. coming from broken families, close relationship, factors into relationship with delinquents include coming from broken families, exhibiting bad attitudes, it's not surprising, therefore, to social class and delinquency. Most young people convicted of offences have fathers who were manual workers. On the 7th class occupations, statistics were found that one third came from class 7. So, one third from class 7. So, this will explain that the preponderance of the working class delinquents by reference to the meanings held by the police and juvenile officers and the interactions between them and the juveniles. So, when the middle class juveniles were arrested, there was less likelihood for them from being charged with an offense. Parents are better able to negotiate successfully on their behalf. Middle class parents can present themselves from a respectable and reasonable people and honest way. From a nice neighborhood who look forward to a rosy future of their child. They promise cooperation with the juvenile officers, assuring that their son and daughter are suitable and remorseful. Okay. As a result, the middle class juvenile is often defined as ill rather than criminal, as accidentally straying from the path of the righteousness rather than committed to wrongdoing, as cooperative rather than recalcitrant, as having a real chance of reforming rather than being a born loser. He or she is typically counseled, warned, and released. In this world, what ends up being called justice is negotiable. So, negotiable justice. Cicero based his research on two Californian cities, each with a population of around 100,000. The socioeconomic characteristics of the two populations were similar. In terms of structure or theories, the numbers of delinquents produced. Socioeconomic characteristics of the two populations were similar in terms of structural theories. The number of delinquents produced by the presence of the social structure should be similar in each city. However, Cicero found a significant difference in the numbers of delinquents arrested and charged. He argues that the size, organization, policies, and practice of the juvenile police bureau and bureaucrats are the only factors that can account for this difference. For example, the city with the highest rate of delinquency employed more juvenile officers and kept more detailed records on offenders. So the city with the highest rate of delinquency employed more juvenile officers and kept more detailed records on offenders. Based on research on two California cities with a population of around 100,000. The Socioeconomic characteristics of the two populations were similar in terms of structural theories. The numbers of delinquents produced by the pressures of the social structure should be similar in each city. However, Session found a significant difference in numbers of delinquents arrested and charged. He argued that the size, organization, policy, and practice of the juvenile and the police bureaus are the only factors that can account for Devian's phenomenological perspective. Session argues that in the city, the response of the police to delinquency tends to be quite variable depending on the publicity given to the case by the local paper or the pressure generated by the mayor or the chief or the captain of detectives. The societal reaction can be seen directly to affect the rate of delinquency. City with the highest rate of delinquency employed more juvenile officers and kept Cicero argues that in the city the response of the police traditional Marxist perspective. William Chambliss, Pierce and Lauren and Singer have used Marxist perspective to provide a framework for understanding deviance in capitalist societies. Sociologists see power as largely being held by those who own and control the means of production. Okay. The superstructure reflects the relationship between the powerful and the relatively powerless. The economic structure and the superstructure. Is the economic structure that shapes the superstructure, and the superstructure helps in the performing of the economic structure. The superstructure reflects the relationship between the powerful and the powerless. The ruling and the subject clauses a part of the superstructure of the state, the agency of the social control, the law, and the definition of deviance. Each reflect all this of the ruling class interest. Okay. As an instrument of the ruling class, the state possesses laws that support ruling class interest, maintain its power, and coerce and control the subject class. Laws are not an expression of the value considered but a reflection of ruling class ideology. So, as an instrument of the ruling class, the state possesses laws that support ruling class interests, maintain its power, and coerce and control the subject class. Laws are not an expression of the value consistent but a reflection of the ruling class ideology. Thus, a general but a reflection of ruling class ideology. Laws are not an expression of value consistent but a reflection of this is general commitment to laws on part of the members of the society as a whole is an aspect of false class consciousness since in practice laws benefit only the ruling minority. Who makes the law and who benefits? So the question is who makes the law? So it's the ruling class and those powerful are the makers of the law, and who benefits? The minority ruling class. So they're the one who benefits from the law. So from the Marxist perspective, laws are made by the state which represent the interests of the ruling class. So it's all about law. Many sociologists have noted a large number of laws dealing with property in capitalist society. For example, Herman Mannheim wrote The History of Criminal Legislation in England and many other countries shows that excessive prominence was given by the law to the production of the property. The history of the criminal legislation in England and many other countries so that excessive prominence was given by the law to the production of the property. So when a law benefit the ruling class, supplies value consistent for false class ideology. Who makes law? The state actually makes law because it is in their interest to make the law, and through the law they control the lower class. Many social have noted that large number of laws dealing with the property in the capitalist society. Okay, for example, Herman wrote the history of criminal legislation in England and many other countries so that excessive prominence was given by the law to the protection of the property. According to William Chambers, such laws are largely unnecessary in feudal society where land, immovable property was the main source of wealth and landowners were the undisputed masters of the economic resources of the country. However, the increasing importance of the trade and commerce, the movable property, and the eventual replacement of feudalism by capitalism resulted in a vast number of laws protecting the property interest of the emerging capitalist class. Further, the capitalist state is often reluctant to pass laws which regulate large capitalist concerns and which might threaten their profitability. Points out that capitalists often spend vast sums of money trying to attract investment from corporates. Capitalist state is often reluctant to pass laws which regulate large capitalist concerns and which might threaten their profitability. They threaten their existence. For example, it do not bring laws to regulate the major corporations. For example, vast sums of money are spent in trying to attract investment from corporators. The increasing importance of the trade and trying to invest in the corporations, they often use investors tax concessions. Okay, right. However, the increasing importance of the trade in commerce and the vast number of laws protecting the property interests of the emerging capitalist class. Having tried so hard to attract inward investment, the state is willing to risk alienating large corporations. In the sense, the state is expected to pass or enforce stringent laws against pollution, worker health, safety, monopolies. This pollution, workers, health, safety, monopolies, and such measures frighten off the much sought after investment and engender the equally dreaded loss of confidence. A recent example which could be used to support this viewpoint is the deregulation of financial market prior to the banking crisis. Deregulation of the financial market prior to the banking crisis of 2008 and the subsequent credit crunch is a good example. recessions and sovereign debt crisis. The activities of the vast majority of the bankers and financiers involved were not seen as illegal, and far from being prosecuted, many give rich through the payment of the large bonuses. Non-decision making, just as important as the laws that are passed are the laws that are not passed. So what we're talking about a deviancy of white collar crime not taken into consideration, and they are not considered as deviant. The passage of the laws by the state in favor of the capitalism, because the superstructure deviancy is a superstructure that helps in the maintenance of the capitalism. Who makes the law? Who benefits? Non-decision making. Just as important, just as important as the laws that are passed are the laws that are not passed. Non-decision making is as important as decision making. For example, okay, in chapter it is argued that the ruling class have the power to ensure that only safe decisions are taken. Non-decision, only safe decisions are taken, and to prevent many issues from ever reaching the point of decision. Many issues from ever reaching the point of decision. Chambliss suggests that much of what takes place in the creation of the rules in the non-decision making. Extreme inequalities of wealth and poverty in US are justified by the ruling class idling these statements that they have earned their money, they have a right to spend it is as they set fit. Okay, this guy Chambliss. They have a right to spend it as they see fit. Few break through the barriers of the false consciousness. Angela Davis, a former leader of the Black Panthers, a militant Black American organization. So Black Panther organization was the exception rather than the rule, which when she claimed the real criminals in the society are not all the people who populate the prisons across the state, but those people who have stolen the wealth of the world from the people. The real criminals are not who have populated the prison, but those who have stolen the wealth from the people. those who have stolen the wealth of the world from the people. In her eyes, the real criminals are members of the capitalist class, ruling class. Control of the superstructure prevents its views from becoming widespread, from developing into major issues, and from being translated into law. Okay. So, who breaks the law and who gets caught? Non-decision making. So deviancy, favor law, related to law, and who breaks the law and who gets caught. Sociologists who have been strongly influenced by Marxism tend to argue that the crime is widespread in all social strata. So, of course, crime. Many of the most serious antisocial and predatory acts committed in modern industrial countries are corporate crimes. So, corporate crimes is not taken into consideration. Still claims that who breaks the law, who gets caught, non-decision making. Sinner claims that corporate crime does more harm than the street crimes because a wider public interest is involved when a corporate commits a crime. Urban nationalism. Writing NSA pointed out that the figures suggesting the corporate crimes cost more in terms of both money and lives than street crime. For example, according to Snyder, street crime involves loss of around $4 billion each in the USA. However, losses from corporate crime are more than 20 times greater. So, refer to 312 US savings and loan companies. The General Accounting Agency estimated the total cost of the bailing out of these companies as a minimum of $325 billion and more probably around $500 billion. This means it is likely to have cost for every household in the USA. Despite the enormous cost of the corporate crimes, both the penalties and the chances of prosecution. So, despite the enormous cost of the corporate crime, both the penalties and the chances of prosecution for those involved in it are usually very small. Snyder argues that enforcement agencies are expected to balance the cost of enforcing regulation with the benefits. Prosecutions are normally used as a last resort, and it is more likely to be small businesses than taken to court rather than big corporations, which do most harm. So just come up with the question and then I'll give you the answer according to topic as well. role on non-decision making. So they're not the state is non-decision making. The state is not taking into consideration the major issues, or the corporate government does not try to build laws on that. Laws do not now. You can have the power to ensure only safe decisions are taken. So only safe decisions. Who breaks the law? Who gets caught? The corporate life. Why break the law? Why enforce the law? So why break the law? Capitalism and crime. Many Marxists see crime as a natural outgrowth of the capitalist society. They argue that capitalist economic system generates crime from the following reasons. Why? Inequality. The economic infrastructure is a major influence upon social relationships, beliefs and values. The capitalist model emphasizes the maximization of profits and the accumulation of wealth. Capitalist structure of society, reason for accumulation, so accumulation of profit. Economic structure is a major influence upon the social relations, beliefs and values. The capitalist emphasizes the maximum accumulation of profit, maximization of profit, accumulation of wealth, and maximization of profit. Economic self-interest rather than public duty motivates behavior. Capitalism is based on private ownership of property and personal gain rather than collective well-being is encouraged. Profit making, extraction of maximum profit and accumulation of wealth, economic self-interest and public duty, private ownership of property, personal gain rather than collective well-being. Capitalism is a competitive system, mutual aid and cooperation for the betterment of all. Or is a competitive system, mutual aid system. A discourse in favor of the individual achievement at the expense of the others. Competition breeds aggression, hostility, and particularly for the losers. Also बनाते हैं मैंने हाउस स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन बनाते हैं तो भी हो गया है मैं सोच पिन कर दूँगी बाद में पिन को सरप्राइज करेंगे. Greed, self-interest, and hostility generated by the capitalist system motivate many crimes at all levels within the society. So, values of capitalism. Leads to crime. Members of each stratum use whatever means and opportunities for their class position provides to commit crime. Thus, in low-income areas, the mugger, the petty thief, the pusher, the pimp, and the prostitute use what they have got to get what they can. In high-income brackets, business people, in high-income brackets, business people, lawyers, and politicians have more effective means at their disposal to grab a large share of the cake. Given the nature of the capitalist society and particularly the American society, how this crime is rational and makes sense. Members of each stratum use whatever means and opportunities their class position provides to commit crime. Thus, in low-income areas, the mugger, the petty thief, and the pusher, the pimp, and the prostitute do what they have got to get what they can. In higher income brackets, business, lawyers, and politicians have more effective means at their disposal to grab a larger share of the cake. Given the nature of the capital, particularly American society of content, argues that crime is rational. It makes sense in a dog society where competition is the order of the day. Individuals must fend for themselves in order to survive. American poor since the USA has minimal welfare services compared to other advanced lesser variety. Most crime in this country share a single important similarity. They represent rational response to the competitiveness and inequality of life in capitalist societies. Selective law enforcement. Okay. Selective law enforcement evaluation of the conventional Marxism. So what do you learn? So we learned that how laws enforced selectively in capitalist are benefiting the white collar and the capitalist. Laws are not brought to regulate capitalism but to regulate the people. Then we also learned about the nature of the capitalist society wherein competition create self-interest becomes dominant, and as a crime it is rational to commit crime in capitalist society. Okay. Nature of the that I'm just saying. From Marxist viewpoint, the selective enforcement of the law has a number of important consequences, as noted above. The occasional prosecution of the ruling class crime perpetuates a fiction. The occasional prosecution of the ruling class crime perpetuates a fiction that the law operates for the benefit of all of the society, that the state represents the public interest, and the extent of the ruling class crime is small. Conversely, frequent prosecution of the members of the subject class has equally important consequences. By selecting members of the subject class and punishing them as individuals, it protects a system that is primarily responsible for their minimal deviance. So, by selecting members of the subject class and punishing them as individuals, I love you too. Enjoy. By selecting members of the subject class and punishing them as individuals, it protects a system that is primarily responsible for their criminal deviance. Individuals are defined as social failures, and such they are responsible for their criminal activities. So, by selecting members of the subject class and punishing them as individuals, it protects the system that is primarily responsible for their criminal deviance. And punishing them as individuals, it protects the system that is primarily responsible for their criminal deviance. So what they do, they select the members of the subject class and punish them as individuals. They select the members of the it protects the system that is primarily responsible for their criminal deviance. Okay. So by selecting the members of subject class and punishing them, individuals are defined as social failures, and as such they are responsible for their criminal activities. In this way, blames and condemnation are directed at the individual rather than institutions of capitalism. The imprisonment of selected members of the subject class legitimately neutralizes opposition to the system. Immigrant blacks are heavily overrepresented among those arrested for the street crimes such as robbery and aggravated assault. So Gordon argues that defining criminals as animals and misfits as enemies of the state provides a justification for incorporating them in the prisons. Description hidden from the view. In this way, the most embarrassing extremes produced by the capitalist system are neatly swept under the carpet. If something were really done to help those who broke the law, if their problems were made public, the whole system might be questioned. Let's write this.